Welcome to Scoreboard, the podcast that explores how athletes both current and retired define success beyond the game. Each episode dives into the mindset, financial decisions and career choices that shape their personal scoreboard, whether they're still in the arena or transitioning to life after sport. From victories to challenges, we reveal how athletes take charge of their own paths and decide what truly matters on their scoreboard of life. I'm your host, Chris Titley, and welcome to Scoreboard.
Hi, it's Chris Titley here. In today's episode of Scoreboard, the podcast, I am joined by our first netball guest, Steph Fretwell. Steph, how are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Very well. We're 36 episodes in. Can you believe it? And I have not interviewed a netballer. And yay, finally today is the day. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
We're sitting here at the end of March. We've just had a bit of a traumatic event in Queensland, the Cyclone Alfred that came in a week or so ago, and you're based at the Sunshine Coast, is that right?
Yes, I am based on the Sunshine Coast, but we were actually very lucky. We were, I think, very lucky compared to some of our southern, like Brisbane and Gold Coast. Cara, so a girl I play with, Cara Conant, she's actually from Magnetic Island up in Townsville, so she'd experienced a few cyclones in her life, and she had actually said to us that we will probably be on the better side of it because we were north of the eye. So there was a bit of disruption with training just because of the warnings, but in all other aspects, I didn't lose power. There was a little bit of wind, but yeah, we definitely did not cop it like some of the people south of the Sunshine Coast.
And as I said, we're sitting here in March of 2025. How's your 2025 begun?
Yeah, not too bad. On a personal note, my husband and I are finally living just us two. I've always had a housemate, so we moved house, being close to the beach, which is really nice. And then training, we're pretty much nearly at this season, so it's just been pre-season since the start of January. A lot of running, a lot of sweat, especially on the Sunshine Coast. But yeah, leading into, we're pretty much nearly a week out from the Super Netball starting, which is really exciting. This is the fun part.
Yeah, no, but speaking of fun part, or maybe not so fun part, the moving house, how did you go?
I don't want to throw my husband under the bus, but I might. He's a FIFO worker, so he's 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So his swings ended up that I moved the house all by myself with some friends' help, but I will say as much as I probably do complain about it, I love organisation. So I think if he was here, I probably would have just got annoyed him putting things in spots that I wouldn't put them in. So it's probably best that he wasn't here for the move.
Yeah, no, I think one of the hardest parts of moving house is when you get into the new house and you've got all the boxes and you're like, okay, where does the cutlery go? Where does the knives go? Which part of the bookshelf? Where does the bookshelf go? And what books go in the bookshelf? And what books can we give to charity? How'd you go with all that?
It was quite cathartic for me. I love that whole process. I love flat packing. So we've moved into a smaller place. So we had to buy a bit of furniture, which was also fun for me. But that whole building process I love. And I think, again, if Marcus was here wanting to help me, I maybe would have been a little bit angry because it's my happy place. So no, I love that part. The boxes, it's a bit overwhelming to begin with, but then, finding spots for everything is good. But yeah, I've definitely gone on a bit of spending spree buying some new things, which has been fun.
Yes, and then you go to Bunnings and you're like, oh yeah, I just got to get the one item, and you come out with 10 and you spend $300. Yep. You're like, oh, why did I go to Bunnings? Everyone tells me that I'll do that and I end up doing that. But We're not here to talk about house renovations. We're here to talk about your life, and we're talking about the Scoreboard of life and playing over 50 games for Australia for netball. I'm curious to know where the spark happened and at what age when you picked up the netball and started playing.
So I was 6 years old. So I have two older sisters who I'm the youngest, so wanted to be doing everything that they were doing, and they were playing netball. So I wanted to be playing netball. So I started when I was 6 years old, but I vividly remember when I knew I wanted to play for Australia. It was the 1999 World Cup over in New Zealand, and Sherelle McMahon ended up winning with a last-minute goal. Jill Mack was the coach at the time, and there were some absolutely incredible players in that team. And I remember watching that back when there was like a VCR moment, and it was like we recorded it. And I remember I used to just watch that over and over again, and that was the spark for me. I absolutely fell in love with netball, and I would go into the backyard and I'd put on like my little netball uniform and pretend to be Sherelle McMahon in the backyard because, that's the moment that I absolutely fell in love with netball, and that was my spark.
And then did you manage to start playing in a team and getting out in the court and actually playing games? And I suppose, from that, how did you find the competitive instinct of playing?
So I when I was 6, I convinced my mum and dad to let me play in my sister's. She was 8 at the time, so that was the first ever game down at Pine Rivers Netball Association. I played in a carnival in my sister's team, and while they do now, I think I was very much that annoying younger sister. They do claim that they are the reason I've been able to do what I've been able to do. So, then went from on then, like I was a kid who had a lot of natural talent. I got told from a really young age, like even when I was 8, I remember it was coordinator 8 back then. I was like what they used to call like the coach's helpers, because I used to know where everyone went, where the center could go, where the goal shooters could go. And so I would be helping my little mates as well out on a netball court. And I just had a lot of natural talent. I could read a game of netball from a really young age. So by the time I was 12, I was already in the top division at the Pine Rivers Netball Association playing, and throughout then was able to make teams through my underage.
And then the positioning of goal attack and the shooter, where did that come about, and what position were you at a young age?
I wanted to play everywhere. I wanted to be a defender. I wanted to be center. I wanted to play goal attack. It probably got to a point when I was 15, 16 years old, where you kind of, for me, then I got pushed into the goal attack position. But then throughout, even then, I was playing for Queensland, and I remember I was pulled into a Queensland under-17 team, and I actually was told that I was too short to be a shooter. So I was then kind of pushed into mid-court, but I do have a stubborn personality, and I was like, no, I want to be a shooter. I'd idolized Sherelle McMahon from a young age, and even Nat Medhurst. So, I loved it. So was stubborn even when they told me I was too short to be a shooter. I just learned different things that I could do, learning how to step back. And from then, it was probably then I was continued to play goal attack. But then even when I made my, so it was ANZ back then, my professional, I guess, with the New South Wales Swifts, majority of my court time was actually at wing attack. We had Susan Pettit there, and she was an incredible goal attack. So I also, even in my start of my professional career, I was playing a little bit of wing attack, but I've always loved goal attack. It's like they call it the princess position and the glory position, but I wouldn't call myself a princess.
Is it like the lead singer of a band? Like everyone knows Bono from U2, but they might not know the bass drummer.
I see. I would say that's more goal shooter. I think they're the probably a bit more of the princesses. The way I play goal attack, I don't necessarily score a whole bunch of goals. I do tend to pass off to my shooter a little bit more because I grew up with a holding shooter. So I was the one that just made the dummy lead so the ball could go over to the tall shooter, which I've always been fine with.
You mentioned that you did play for Queensland at an underage, but then you also mentioned that you did move down south to Sydney to make your debut. Can you talk about that decision, how that came about and the move?
So probably going back to my point at the start, I had a lot of natural talent. I made a lot of my underage. So Queensland, I'd won MVPs. I'd been captains of like a lot of the underage teams, but I probably had no work ethic. So I kind of just made teams on my talent. And then I went down to the Australian Institute of Sport and spent 2 years down there, time of my life. Absolutely love it. I think it's a real shame that they still don't have that for netball at the moment. I feel like it was like my college experience down there, living and breathing netball. And I was down there with a whole bunch of also very talented netballers who knew how to work hard. So it was probably my first time experiencing a little bit of competition, I guess you could say. And through that process, I got an award, the Gwyneth Benzies Award, which was the award given to a player who showed the most promise that they believed would play for Australia. And then when I left the AAS, so I would have been 20 years old, there were girls down there who got contracts, like professional contracts, but I didn't get a contract. And then I came back to Queensland and I was dropped from the EDP program, which was kind of the pathway into the Firebirds. Teams that I was starting, I was now on the bench. So I experienced this moment of, like getting dropped when I hadn't. So it wasn't until I think probably 2 years later that I had my probably epiphany, or the moment for me that I learnt that I didn't have work ethic. And so in 2014, I actually worked really hard on the things that coaches had told me I needed to work on. But I was always listening to the people who were like, you should be playing for the Firebirds. And instead of the people who were making the decisions on contracts, I was listening to the people who were just, my biggest fans, which is lovely, but I didn't listen to the feedback. And then eventually in 2014, I worked on the things that the coaches were saying I need to work on. And while I always wanted to play for the Firebirds and I didn't get a contract there, by the end of that year, I actually had a contract with Rob Wright had called me, and I was able to go down and play for the New South Wales Swifts with a team, when I think about it, and the players that were in it, like, were some of the best players I think that have ever played for Australia at that point. So that's how I kind of ended up at the Swifts, and spent 2 years there, which was like incredible.
And Steph, you did mention that you're a little bit stubborn, and you also mentioned that you were naturally talented. How confronting was it to get feedback from the people that mattered to say, you need to do this to get to that next level, being someone that says, well, actually, I'm pretty good, so you don't really need to tell me what to do?
That's literally what I would think. And I wouldn't listen to them. And I was only listening to the people who were telling me how amazing I was and that I should be there. So it wasn't, and this is probably my scoreboard moment. So I don't know if you want me to touch on this now, but
yeah, go for the scoreboard moment, by the way.
Yeah.
We're looking for a sponsor for this moment. So this is a big moment. Yep.
For me, my scoreboard moment, and it's funny, it had this, like, a lady, her name's Mel Passion. She has nothing to do with necessarily netball, but she is the wife of Gary Passion, who was a teacher at my school, but also my netball coach, and has had a big impact on my ability as a netball player. So we joke now, Mel and Gary are very close friends of mine. They spoke at Marcus and my wedding. They mean a lot to me. So Gary would go home to Mel and talk about this kid, Steph Wood, this kid who has all this talent, and she's so frustrating because she doesn't go above and beyond, but she's so good, so you can't leave her off the court. And then eventually they own a company, and I got a job with them after school. And so Mel was my boss. They owned that company. And it wasn't until I was on a run with Mel Passion and I was telling her, I was at the point where I was like, I'm giving up netball. I'm just done. I can't do this anymore. And I was going to tell her that I was moving. I wanted to do a gap year, that classic gap year, go over to England. And she just turned to me and she's like, you know why you've never made it? And I was like, oh, no, why? And she's like, you have no work ethic. And for some reason, I have no idea why, she's not a netball coach or anything like that. She's watched a lot of netball through Gary's career. That hit me a lot harder than anyone else. She was very to the point about it. And it was that night that I went home and I was like actually honest with myself and going, yeah, she's totally right. And so in that year, that was at the beginning of 2014, and Mel, and with even sometimes Gary and we worked on all the things that I had been given feedback on. And by the end of that year, that's when I had my contract in New South Wales Swifts. Like, she was the first person, it's probably horrible, that I remember getting the phone call from Rob Wright, and I'd come home from work and I'd got the phone call offering me a contract. And so I was crying, I was very emotional. And I ran past my mum and dad and was like, and they were like, are you okay? And I was like, I just got a contract with the New South Wales Swifts. But the first person I went to was Mel, because she'd went through this massive journey with me. And I remember we sat in her office crying just being like, oh my God, we've done it. And it makes me emotional now. So yeah, that's my scoreboard moment that changed my whole career.
And then from that moment, obviously, there's joy, there's a wonderful over feeling of like, yes, I've done it. But then there's also now let's get onto the court and perform. So do you remember your first game and getting there and going, wow, this is the big time?
I don't remember my first game. I remember my debut. And I touched on it before. There was some of the most incredible players in this team. I remember I'd been picked for the Swifts, and I'd gone down because I also, another netball player who I grew up playing with is Amelia Ecanasio. So I grew up playing, she's now the captain of the New Zealand team, and she had just gotten picked for the Ferns at that point. And so we went down to watch, and she was playing against Australia. And I remember seeing Julie Coletto, and I was technically in her team. I'd never met her. But she is one of these players that I watched when I was younger, and I was like, I'm so intimidated by her. And I remember seeing her in Cotton On, and I was with Nell, and she goes, go say hello to her and introduce yourself. Like, you're on teams. And I was like, I can't talk to her. So then it was crazy to me that then 2 months later, I was then meeting all of them. Kim Green, Shani Layton, Susan Petter, Caitlin Thwaites, like these people in these teams were just incredible to me. And then to fast forward to make my debut, it was against Magic in New Zealand. And I got put on at halftime, and I think we were winning. I can't remember. But it's that I say goosebump moment where everything that I'd work for and had kind of eventuated. And if I had only played one game, I think I would have been really happy because I'd realised my dream. And yeah, we played against Magic and ended up winning by 2, I believe. But yeah, made my debut in New Zealand.
And so the dream of playing netball professionally in a league, and obviously to make Australia, was the aspiration as a young Steph. But then also, was the reality as much as you thought it would have been as a kid with all those moments that are trialing as a teenager to actually then play in a full game?
Yeah,
half a game, but if you know
half
what I mean.
A game, yeah.
I
think especially in my first 2 years, everything was just so fun because there wasn't probably the pressure on me to be the starting player. I could come on, and I was, again, very lucky that we had an incredible team, and there were games that we would win by 20 plus goals. So in the last quarter, they would be like, all right, let's roll the bench. And I'd get to go on and play really carefree, which was actually a lot of fun and really enjoyable. So it was everything that I wanted it to be. And like, of course you had nerves, but in those first 2 years, everything probably was a lot more. It was fun because I probably didn't have the pressure to be the person to perform.
And then the work ethic, did it improve those first 2 years as well?
Definitely, ever since like that 2014 period, my work ethic definitely, I think, improved to just, and also listening to, of course, like sometimes it sucks to get criticism. Like sport, you're always under a microscope. We go to work every single day, and everything is constantly to get better and what can you improve at. And as athletes, I think we can be quite towards those negative and be like, I constantly, I could have done this better. I could have done this. You're striving to be better every single day. That you kind of can't not have a work ethic. And especially when you make it into a professional team. And I often say this to you, if I ever have any coaching with some younger girls or boys, is especially when you get into the professional aspect of your sport, your personality and your personality traits do play a part in selection. Like, it's not just talent. And I really gravitate towards kids who might not be the most talented, but they have a work ethic and they will go above and beyond. Like, they're the coachable kids that you want to get around. So especially that 2014 period, I learned what hard work was. I learned how to get outside my comfort zone and being vulnerable. There's nothing worse sometimes than being bad at something, and fitness was a really big thing for me. Is like, I'm not great at it. So in 2014, I really learned about the hard work, and then also to then go into a professional environment, and these ladies I was playing with who had been at the top of their game for many years, you saw another level of what it takes to make it in a professional team.
And Steph, you mentioned about being part of a team dynamic and knowing your role and coming off the bench in the first couple of years. But as you got better as a player and improved, you became, a starter, and you had, a different role in the team. Can you talk about how your roles changed over time and whether your relationship with netball changed over time as well?
Yeah, so for my 2 years at the Swifts, I was in that. I could come on and be an impact player. I think in the whole time I was at the Swifts, I maybe started in one game, but everything else I was, got to come on and either have fun or be an impact player. And then when the ANZ changed to the SSN, there were teams added, and I was in this I was probably 24, 25 years old, and I get really uncomfortable talking about this stuff, but I was very spoilt for choice when contracts were getting rolled around in that aspect. I had numerous offers on the table, and one of the offers was to come to the Sunshine Coast Lightning. Best decision I ever made. Was made a good one. And in that first year when I was picked in that team, while I was a starting player, I wasn't the spine. We had three players that you could say was Jiva, Laura Langman, and Caitlin Bassett. They were kind of the big players in our team. So, and I was the starting goal attack, but I didn't feel like I had to be necessarily the best player on the court. So through those years that we had Nolene here, probably till 2019, I still felt like I didn't necessarily have that anxiety around performance. But I definitely, since then, I love pressure. I thrive. I love it. I walk towards it. But after 2019, after a few losses, we lost a grand final, lost a World Cup, and even the previous year had lost a Commonwealth Games. That anxiety probably did come about. And in those later years, and it's something that in this period of my career, I've had to definitely work on. And yeah, I think a lot of athletes kind of can go through that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I want to touch on a few things. You mentioned the Commonwealth Games, but we'll get to that in a second. But the selection for Australia, again, a pivotal moment in your life where, the reality of the dream come true is not just putting on the shirt to play in a national tournament, but now you're going to be representing your country. You can talk about the phone call, the email, the text, whatever happened that day when you got that call or communique.
Yeah, so I got put into the squad in my second year at the Swifts, so it would have been 2016. At the start of 2016, I was invited as just a training partner, not in the squad, to a tour in England. So I got to experience what it would be like to be around the environment, but I wasn't in the squad. And then through 2016, I was elevated into the squad. And then we got given the tour dates of what it would be on. And at that point, my older sister, she was my travel buddy. We'd gone to Thailand the previous year. We'd done Europe together. And we had booked a holiday. And then when I looked at the dates, I was like, that's smack bang on one of these tours. And so I sent, before the team was even announced or anything, I sent an email to Lisa Alexander, and I think I tried to word it too well that it made it sound like I would choose the holiday over representing Australia. And I remember that phone call, her calling me being like, what do you mean? And I was like, oh, no. Like, if I'm selected, 100%, I will not go on my holiday. I will play for Australia. So I think my wording of my email wasn't great. And then got the phone call that I was playing in the quad series at the end of that year, which was emotional. Like, those phone calls are nerve-wracking, whether you think you have a good chance or whether you have no chance. And I was living with Maddie Turner and Laura Langman at that point in Sydney. And I remember crying and celebrating with them that I'd been selected at the quad series. And I then had to call my sister, though, because it was on that trip, and being like, I can't go on our holiday. But then it all worked out that my other sister was able to go just on a free holiday with my older sister.
Wow, what a moment! And then to represent to get onto the court, you want to talk about the nerves? Was there a bit of nerves?
Absolutely. I still remember that first national anthem, another goosebump moment, sisters in arms with the rest of the Diamonds, and Nat Medhurst was the person who gave me my dress, who I'd grown up idolising and modelling my game off. So that was a very special moment. And then it was in New Zealand. We played in Auckland. None of my family were over there at that point. But I remember Laura Langman, who I'd come quite close with, living with her. She was a part of the quad series, wasn't playing in the game, but I debuted against South Africa and came on in the last quarter. Again, to have the game was probably won at that point. So the pressure definitely wasn't there. It was just there to go out and have some fun. And full circle moment, what I didn't realise, I was playing against Carla Pretorius, who in 2 months' time was going to be my teammate, as she was picked up to play for the Lightning. So got to debut up against Carla, and it was a very, very special moment, something that I'll treasure. I looked back recently because Christiana Manua has just been signed with the Sunshine Coast Lightning, and we actually debuted at the same time. So I went back through and I was like, Chris, we should recreate this photo of us from our debut, and so young.
I'm going to touch on the highlights and lowlights of your career playing for Australia. We're going to start with the Commonwealth Games in 2018 at the Gold Coast, going through what was a pretty good campaign, but then right at literally the last second, heartbreak. I'm going to take you back there because sport is all about moments, about what you're feeling at the time, and then to pick yourself up to where you've come now and to look back in your career with some other moments I'll touch on in a second. But let's just go back to that particular game for a second.
2018. It was Commonwealth Games incredible to play in front of my family and friends. Home state was great, and to have, again, the team, when I look back on it, it's Laura Geitz is on this team, Kim Revalian, Gabby Simpson, incredible players that I thought it would just happen. It's we're in our home state. Oh, I'm in a home state, home country. We've got all these incredible players. We were playing England, who had never won a gold medal. New Zealand had always been our rivals, and they did not have a great campaign. We were winning all of our matches by 20 plus goals. It kind of was just this is going to happen. Not that it's easy and you don't think it's going to be easy, but to then have it taken away in the last moments. I remember missing a goal, and then we got the intercept back, and then we were back up we were making it even. But I remember looking at Bass as that final goal. I couldn't watch the final goal, and I just remember looking at Bass crying, and she's like, it's okay. Yeah, it hurt. Definitely hurt. But it also made you, in a way, realise it's not easy. It doesn't just happen because you've got the names in your team.
And then obviously the jubilation from England was probably more pronounced than other teams that you've lost to over the time as well. But then to pick yourself up and then to go, this is a huge moment which was taken away from us on the last second, to get back and go, right, we're going to play these girls again, we're going to play England again, we've got other further Commonwealth Games, we've got World Cups, etc. I want to go to 2022 and then some quasi revenge on what you missed out on at the Gold Coast. You want to talk about that campaign?
Yeah, so we went through a bit of a transition as well with a new coach, and I've said this to actually Stacey Marinkovic, to backtrack a little, after 2019 when we lost the World Cup, I actually took a break. I wanted to feel like a quote unquote normal human. I didn't want to live on a schedule. I didn't want the pressure of performing. So I actually opted out of the end of 2019, and COVID hit. We got a new coach, and Stacey came in, and I was probably a little bit unsure if I wanted to continue. playing for Australia. I really enjoyed my time at the end of the year and having a break. And I remember our camp in 2020, and Stacey pitched what she wanted from this campaign, and she lit a fire in my belly. And I loved everything that she spoke to us about, her philosophies on things. So that fire in my belly, then getting into a leadership position. And I remember we talked about, and I've openly talked about, we were world number one, but we had no major trophies in our cabinet. We did not have the World Cup or the Com Games. So worked really hard and those moments. And then 2022, so the Com Games, is one of those teams that I feel like, you have a really good team when they're the people you want to catch up with. So the stuff that we had off the court, we couldn't see our family once we were in the village. So we had this really close-knit group, different personalities that just worked. And I'm the semi-final, and they're on their home soil. The crowd is 100% against us. But my biggest thing is I wanted that gold medal, and we all wanted that gold medal. It didn't matter who we played. We wanted to make sure we won that gold medal, and I guess a little bit of revenge on home soil for them. But it was an absolutely incredible campaign. And yeah, I think one of my favorite photos, it's over there framed, is the gold medal photo. And if you zoom in on everyone's face, the pure joy of that photo is, it makes me get warm and fuzzy every time I look at it.
Yep. And that particular game against Jamaica, they started off pretty well. They were firing and they were dancing on the bench, and things are going their way. And obviously there needs to be some sort of team talk and team chatter, and you played your role in that particular game. How was it for you being off the court, I suppose, when they got over the line, but knowing that you're part of something special?
Because I started that game. I've also joked around, I think I'm a semi-final player. I think the best games that I've played at major tournaments are semi-finals. But I remember, so I came off and Cara went on. This makes me emotional as well, actually. And I've known Cara since she's been 18. We played state league together when she didn't know, she was, no disrespect to her at all, because her now, she's so athletic, she was Bambi. She was so tall. She didn't really know how to use her arms and her legs. So I've never been prouder than when she went out on that court in her first major tournament. She hadn't been in the Diamonds for very long. And to see her perform the way she did was just really proud, a very proud moment for me. And I actually remember Joe and I on the bench holding hands with 5 minutes to go and going, holy crap, we've done it. And that's probably the part for me that, what I loved about especially my last 4 years with the Diamonds is it was a group of players that it wasn't just the 7 out on court. It was whoever was off court, the training partners who are so selfless and coming over, which would be a really difficult part to be a part of, is they do all the prep work, and then when the fun part comes, they have to leave. And so, it doesn't matter to me that I was off the court, because I know that I contributed to getting us that gold medal, and that's what I absolutely adore about that group is we were so connected and so happy for each other. That's one of my biggest things is I never want someone to think I want them to fail because that means I get to succeed. I don't want, if it was Gretel out a goal attack at that time, that I don't want her to think I'm not her biggest cheerleader, and I will be her biggest cheerleader, because if at that moment it was the best decision Stacey could make, putting Gretel out at goal attack and bringing Cara on changed the game. It was something that the Jamaicans hadn't seen, and it worked. So, I definitely celebrate it. And, for me, it doesn't matter that I wasn't out on that court at all.
That just shows the emotion of sport and certainly the beautiful moments of sport and certainly the definition of a team, right? The definition of a high-performing team is that there's different roles. And I think one example I sort of go back to is the AFL Grand Final last year where Oscar McInerney from the Brisbane Lions got injured and couldn't play.
Yeah.
And, they flew him down to Melbourne and he's like, and the smile on his face is like, I just want Darcy Fort to do so well. I want the team to do so well and be part of something special. And speaking of something special, the following year, your last year playing for Australia in the World Cup and going back to play England again. Do you want to go through that particular campaign and how much that meant as well in 2023?
Yeah, so I pretty much think I knew after Com Games that if I was lucky enough to play at the World Cup, that would be my last tournament. So I actually had sat down with Liz. I told Liz at the beginning of 2023 that I would retire after the World Cup. And I told Stacey that if I was lucky enough that I would retire after the World Cup, but I didn't want anyone else to know. Of course, my family knew. I think if people were really looking at stuff, you could probably put two and two together that my whole family came over to the World Cup, which is a little bit not – my mum doesn't love to travel. So and we had openly spoken about that we wanted the World Cup, like that was the last thing in the armour. And again, going through that competition, we lost to England in the rounds, which meant we had to come up against Jamaica in the semi-final. And Jamaica were hot favourites and every right to be. They had an incredible defence and they had Janelle at in their goal shooting. So hot favourites, and I guess we took the harder way through. But if you want to be the best, you got to beat the best. And Jamaica were playing incredible. So that semi-final, to be honest, I remember Lisa Alexander, a little side note, had always said you should know the best games that you've ever played. You should know the games that your best games you've ever played. And I will hands down say I think that Jamaican semi-final is one of the best games that I have played on a professional netball court. I was cramping for the last 5 minutes of the game, and Liz, I said to her, I was like, I was cramping. She gave me no sympathy. She was just like, you'll be right. So there's I have watched the game back, and there's one centre pass. I'm literally can see that I'm talking to myself and saying, just keep running, just keep running. So to get past past that hurdle of Jamaica, to be honest, I was absolutely spent. I was so spent after that game and would do everything I needed to do to get up for that England game. And to be honest, England has always probably been a team that I probably struggled the most against. I don't know why, just defensively. I don't know why. It's probably a team that I don't think I ever necessarily played my best netball against. But, yeah, came off at halftime and Kira went on and absolutely killed it. Got MVP of that game and played incredibly. And to have that moment at the end where it is the fairy tale finish, that I was able to go out a winner and have everything that, as a vice captain, I had been very open in saying that I wanted every trophy back in the cabinet. And I got a lot of questions afterwards, like, why did you retire? You're still playing good netball. And it felt like the right time for me. I wanted to extend my domestic career. I'm getting older. I don't have the most robust body in the world. And I know what it takes to build to another World Cup and Com Games, and I was definitely not going to go another 4 years. My body definitely wouldn't allow that. So, and I remember telling the girls after, and Kira came up and was like, I'm not ready. And I was like, I think you are. I think you literally just proved out on the netball court that goal attack bib is yours. And Laura Geitz had always said one of the big things is you want to leave the bib in a better spot than when you came in. And I felt like I did that and I'd given everything for it. And it was time for someone else to have that goal attack bib. And Kira, we've even been able to see what she has done even last year. And yeah, that goal attack bib is firmly hers, I believe.
And the little girl moment, Steph, 6 years old, picked up a netball, 2023, retired. How do you feel?
I was really proud. I was really proud of everything that I was able to achieve, to have my family in the in the crowd, and to like wins and losses. And I don't think if you haven't won a premiership or you haven't won, doesn't mean you haven't had a successful career in my eyes, but it is nice to be able to everything that was on my goal sheet to tick off, I was able to achieve, and I was really content, very content with the decision. And, you know, on my locker, it says play for the 6-year-old, because that 6-year-old loves the game. And it's a pressure cooker and everything. But in the end, like, I play netball because I love it, and I find it a lot of fun. And there's the ups and downs, but yeah, you got to remember why you play.
And the advice you'd give to not just a 6-year-old, but maybe someone that's 13 or 14 that wants to play for their country in netball. I say this quote a lot. I live by hard work beats talent when talent forgets to work hard. That's kind of always been my motto in my playing career. But one of the pieces of advice that, one, if you've got a dream, do everything possible. Don't have what ifs, but also don't compare yourself to the next person. And I was guilty of that throughout my underage. Is I made every team when I was young, and one of my best friends, Maddie Colebrook, who was Maddie McAuliffe, she made no underage teams when she was younger, but at 21 was picked up to play for the Sunshine Coast Lightning and won 2 premierships, was a starting wing defence. So everyone has a different journey, and don't compare yourself to the next, because I think it'd be pretty boring if we all go the same way to our goals. And Steph, netball has been such a big part of your life, and will it continue to be a part of your life? You're still in love with the sport post your playing career for Australia. You're still playing now, but maybe 5 years' time, do you hope to continue to love it and be involved in the game?
Yeah, I've gone through not an identity. I wouldn't say identity crisis or anything like that, but I went through this period of going like, okay, who is Steph outside of netball? Like, when I finish, I want to be so far away from netball. I don't want that to be my identity. And then I went through this moment of like, but why? Like, I love the sport. I always want to be involved in the sport. I love coaching. I really love coaching. I love the moment of young girls or boys going, I can't do something. And then if you could capture the moment of when they do it, because you've coached them through that. I love that part of netball and coaching. So where I am in the sport, I don't know if but I don't ever see netball not being a part of my life, because it's a passion of mine. I absolutely love it. So, yeah, TBC, who knows?
And then when you want to switch off from netball, what do you do? What does Steph do to switch off? Is it you're a binge Netflixer, you're a podcaster, you're a reader, all of the above?
I go through my phases. I'm really bad with TV shows in terms of I just binge watch Friends all the time. Like, I'll start from season 1 and I'll go all the way through, and then I'll start at season 1 again. I'm pretty boring. I just like to do nothing. And whether that is reading, sitting on the couch, probably doom scrolling, but I do love to do nothing when I do get the time, which is nice.
And speaking of nothing, you can go down a rabbit hole on the internet. But during your career, you've probably seen the emergence of social media through your career. You're probably of that generation that has been around, and there's obviously a lot of transparency with that. How have you found the Instagram generation of being a high-profile name that people recognise, and then capturing some followers to follow your journey? Yeah,
for me, I understand the purpose of Instagram, and it can build your brand as an athlete, and it gives you opportunities, and I think that's really incredible. I definitely, from my point of view, anything that I put out there, of course I will read comments, and you want to interact with your followers. But I did learn quite early in my career that you're not everyone's cup of tea. Not everyone's going to love you, which is totally fine. And early in my career, I would read comments about what people said about my performance. And especially if I felt like I played well, I'd be like, I needed that validation from an outside source. But then, of course, if you don't have a great game, there's going to be negative comments. So then I was getting into this habit that always reading comments. So I learnt about my circle and whose opinions do matter to me. That if my coach, whatever coach at the time, is saying that I've done my job and I've everything that I need, my family, they're the people's whose opinions do matter to me, especially in relation to my performance. So I have learned very much to, if it's not what I've put out, and if it's like, especially match reports, like it's very easy that I used to read those match reports and what people were saying about me. I just don't read them because not everyone has the inside knowledge to like what role I need to play in a game. They don't have that inside knowledge. So there's this incredible side of social media, but I do think there is this dark side that I do try and say to some of our young ones, especially around comments on performance. You've got to make sure you know whose opinions matter in terms of your performance. So yeah, I'm not a TikToker though. I've never been able to get around TikTok. So some of the girls try and make me do them, and I'm like, I don't know how to do it.
Don't know how to do it. Neither do I, to be honest. I mean, Scoreboard is on TikTok, so you can follow us, but there is just videos of athletes and whatnot, and it's pretty boring. Yeah. But and no dancing and things like that. But I suppose there's that wall of going, okay, there's a circle of knowledge of people that matter to the game, that they know the game, and then people that outside that may not know as well as you. If you get sort of caught into that world, it's like you can have a probably pretty negative spiral, I'd imagine, mentally. And just on that, how have you gone mentally as opposed to physically as well to be a high-performing athlete at the peak performance at the world championship level and World Cup level and gold medal level to kind of keep on top of your mental health?
Yeah, I probably definitely struggled through 2019. So I was so lucky and early in my career. At Swifts, we went to 2 grand finals. We lost, unfortunately. Then I went to 3 straight grand finals with with Sunshine Coast Lightning. Won 2 of those. Went to 2, went to a Com Games and World Cup, but lost them. So in that space, I learned that not that it was easy to make finals, but I made a lot of finals. But at the combination of 2019, I had lost a lot. And so my anxiety around performance was quite high, and I would go into games so worried about what I needed to do. So that's why at 2019, I definitely needed to take a break and not be an athlete and not have that pressure of performance. So then when 2020 rolled around, I did do work around my mindset around games. And I've always loved the pressure of games, but I found myself shying away from it. And how I think about it, it is a game of netball and there is pressure in it, but staying in the moment was a big thing for me. And you can't impact what happened before, and you can't necessarily impact what's going to happen or worry about what's going to happen. But because we were getting in situations that I had a negative experience with, I found myself overthinking a lot. So I had to do work with a sports psych, definitely, and even just a psych in general. I go and see a psych because I think it's just great for my well-being to keep me.
It's a tool,
So, and keep me definitely balanced. So performance anxiety definitely rolled around later in my career, and it's not something that I would say I still suffer from that, definitely, but I have the tools to be able to use to be able to not have the impacts in a negative way.
Did your mind ever drift during games? Like to think, oh, well, it's close, but, if I miss this shot, we might lose and there'll be press on me, etc.?
Yeah, I actually remember, and this was great that it happened to me when it was in 2017. I missed a shot to win the game in 2016 in our final for the New South Wales Swifts. right on the buzzer in extra time. I came on the court in extra time and I missed a shot. And then it continued on. They ended up winning an extra overtime. And just before our final in 2017, I had an interview with a journalist and he said, does the shot from last year ever haunt you? And I was like, oh, well, it hadn't. And that didn't impact me. But as a shooter, definitely now, or like when the games would get close, you turn to the post and instantly in your head, I'd be thinking, don't miss, don't miss, don't miss. This is going to be like massive if you miss this. So that part of things definitely impacted me, especially being a shooter. And I remember having work and just saying, if I'm not willing to take the shot and miss it, that I don't have the right to take the shot and win it. And that was one thing that now I definitely think about is I will own that. It's very easy as a shooter to look at your stats and go, I missed 3 goals, we lost by 1 if I didn't miss that. But also educating for me that it's not all, like netball is 60 minutes, there's 7 people on the court. Yes, you might miss a goal, but there's lots of other things that happen in a game as well that can impact the final result.
Steph, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for today's Scoreboard podcast episode. From that little Steph at 6 years old to the stubborn Steph who's very talented but doesn't want people to tell them what to do, to those first 2 years to playing for Australia, to be vice captain of Australia, play 50-odd appearances for Australia, to have devastating moments in the Commonwealth Games, but also the very high and euphoric moments of being world champions and gold medals. It must give you goosebumps now even talking about it, and to continue to play netball and inspire the younger generation to play netball. I congratulate you on your career and also the next phase of your career in the new house as well, and looking forward to following your progress and catching up.
Beautiful, thank you.